One of the things that I think is really missing from AI right now, which is why it's so good that you have this podcast, is the fact that we tend to forget that the interlocutor or collaborator with AI is human and has human emotions and is subject to all the positives and negatives of being human. And so human beings who are mindful and AI, which is mindful, will be able to more effectively work together.
Welcome to Mindful AI, the podcast that delves into the world of AI and its responsible use and development. I'm your host, Natasha Fong. I'm the founder of Zenta, a provider of mindfulness programs for workplaces. In this podcast, we'll hear from thought leaders in tech industry, academia, and mindfulness so that the layperson like myself can be smarter when thinking about the important topic of mindfulness in AI development and use. Today, I'm so delighted to have Chris Yeh on the Mindful AI podcast. Chris is the co-founder of the Blitzscaling Academy, which teaches individuals and organizations on how to plan for and execute on hypergrowth. He's also co-founder of Blitzscaling Ventures, which invests in the world's fastest growing startups. Chris has founded, advised, and invested in over 100 high-tech startups since 1995, including companies like Ustream and usertesting.com. He's the co-author, along with Reid Hoffman, of Blitzscaling, the lightning fast path to building massively valuable companies, and the co-author, along with Reid Hoffman and Ben Casnocha, of the New York Times bestseller, The Alliance, Managing Talent in the Networked Age. Chris earned 2 degrees from Stanford University and an MBA from Harvard Business School, where he was named a Baker Scholar. Wow. Chris, so great to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It is great to be here.
Chris, just to kick us off, can you give us a brief background of your interest and experience with AI?
Sure thing. So, like many of us, I've been following AI for some time, but it's always seemed like something that was 20 years away. AI has been this dream of computer science for many decades. And I even remember when I was growing up as a little boy in the 1980s, reading about the efforts to create computers that could play chess as well as human beings. And it's remarkable how antiquated that looks now when any online chess engine can beat any human grandmaster handily. But back then, that's what we thought would signify artificial intelligence. But curiously, what would happen every time we would achieve a milestone, we would say, that's not actually AI. Now, recently, I've been following the new developments in AI, so deep learning and the ability to process images, and then all of a sudden along comes ChatGPT, and that's the thing that is the big bang of this current wave of AI. And I've been following along very closely, just like all of us are, with great interest, but I have an extra advantage because my co-author, Reid Hoffman, is one of the founding board members of OpenAI and involved me in some of his AI-based activities, which included last year, helping him write the book Impromptu, which is all about the future of AI and humanity, and which was co-authored with GPT-4. So I have practical experience working on the very first book co-authored with GPT-4. And of course, since then, I've also begun investing in AI companies as part of an AI-themed fund. And so I have practical experience, and I have just decades of background experience as well.
That is so incredible, Chris. And Chris, as an investor, what are the most exciting or promising AI applications or companies that you've seen recently?
Well, I'm very intrigued by, and this is one of the frameworks I use, I'm very intrigued by AI companies that are able to take over tedious, routine, and important tasks. It's crazy how with AI, people try to gravitate towards the sexiest, most out there things right away. And I'm like, no, actually, let's just automate all this stuff that human beings don't actually like doing. I think there's tremendous amounts of value to be created there.
I love that. And I recently saw something that jumped out to me as well. The more we allow machines to do the kind of things they're good at, the less humans have to behave like machines. So I really resonate with what you said. So as a founder and investor, how important is your own self-awareness, mindfulness, and personal development to building companies and technologies that have a positive impact?
Well, I think it's super critical regardless of the impact side, because I think that a lack of self-awareness is often what does in many entrepreneurs and founders. Self-awareness means, to me at least, the ability to accurately assess yourself, understand your capabilities and limitations, and also understand why you're feeling the way you do at any given time, which may be because of circumstances like your company, but it may also be that you didn't get enough to sleep, or maybe you got some food poisoning, or maybe there's someone in your life who's struggling with something. These are all things that you should be aware of. But I like your question because it puts the emphasis very firmly on the notion of, can entrepreneurship and the technology we build have a positive impact on the world? And I think the self-awareness is critical for that as well. People have to actually be aware of the impact they're having on themselves before they'll care about the impact they're having on the rest of the world. And I think people that want humans to be more human, to be happier, to be more fulfilled, are people who will ultimately be able to build better products, because the products that actually lead to this are going to be more sustainable over the long run. That's not to say that you can't make money creating products that are actually bad for people. Clearly, there's many product categories where people have made billions of dollars doing this, but I like to believe that the entrepreneurs who are listening to this podcast want to do something better.
You've talked a lot about the importance of scaling companies quickly. How do you see AI and automation factoring into rapid scaling for startups in the future?
Well, that's the thing. It is going to be absolutely huge in terms of increasing the pace at which startups grow. So if we think about AI, the thing about AI is just a huge productivity multiplier. And I think in many ways, obviously it's not going to be this across everything, but there are specific areas in which AI can make you 10 times or even 100 times as productive. Well, one of the things that holds companies back from growing is the inability to scale their organization or their operations. And when you just can't get enough people to staff what you're trying to do, you have to slow down. Well, if all of a sudden each person could do the work of 10 women or 100 women, all of a sudden you've got many fewer barriers to scaling, and you're going to be able to grow that much faster. So I think that AI will actually be a huge benefit to companies that are looking to blitzscale or grow quickly.
What would you think are the biggest downsides or risks that companies should be aware of when rapidly implementing AI and automation, and how can they scale thoughtfully?
Well, I think that one of the things they have to remember is that AI is evolving rapidly. And so you have to basically build in modularity and room for growth. This is one of the mistakes that has been made throughout history. For example, in World War II and World War I, various countries would build naval vessels. And the ones who were thinking short term would build the naval vessel and cram it with as many guns as they could and take up every single square inch of space, or square meter of space, depending on what kind of system you use to measure things. But the most successful designs were the ones where they planned for the future. They left extra room. They made it possible to pull out the machinery and put in new machinery so that they could be upgraded over their lifetime. The same thing is going to apply as we add AI in. If you hardwire in, well, we're only going to ever need to worry about using GPT-4. What happens when GPT-5 comes out? Or if you decide to switch to something completely different, like inflection and pi. So leaving room for change, growth, adaptability is going to be absolutely critical. The other thing I think is to make sure that you do not overestimate the power of AI as a technology moat. I think it's very common for us to look at some sort of AI-enabled technology and say, wow, this is incredible. It offers 10x gains over the status quo. Of course, everyone's going to want to do that. Possibly true, but what if there's a competing product that offers 20x gains? That's the product that people are going to go for. Or maybe there's a third product that offers 100x gains that's going to dominate and blow those other two away. So you really have to make sure that as you're building AI in, you're leaving that room for adaptability, because you've got to stay on the cutting edge. You cannot rely on your initial choice giving you a permanent competitive advantage.
That's a really good point. And I guess you see it with any kind of technology, right? You have to adapt. You have to be able to manage through changes of technology and process. Are you able to give an example of a company that you've seen, maybe it's not an AI technology, but another kind of technology where they have left that room, and how they did it?
Ooh, excellent question. So from an AI technology standpoint, the companies really haven't been around long enough to really show that. I mean, I would say that you could argue that some of the early companies in the AI writing space, like a Jasper or a writer.com, began using GPT-3 and have adapted over time to GPT 3.5 and GPT-4. So I would argue that is a way of leaving room. But on the other hand, it's new renditions from the same company. It's really not that big an adaptation. But if I look back to prior generations, I look at, for example, various machinery like the Teslas. So the Tesla Model S, Model X, Model 3, they are often built with extra capacity. It might be extra battery capacity. It might be extra power to the motor. It might be more strongly engineered than are strictly necessary, because they figure that later on, you might be able to do a software update that unlocks more power, or you're able to find a new way to set up the suspension or transmission that increases the power of the car. And therefore you needed more strength than you thought you did when you first rolled the car off the assembly line. So that's one of the ways where something that was traditionally a hardware product that's very hard to change became something that was adaptable.
I guess moving on to indicators that we can use to track or ensure that we're successfully aligning AI systems with human values and ethics. What indicators would you recommend using? And how can we effectively measure and guide the development of AI in a direction that benefits society?
Excellent. Well, at the highest level, one of the big questions is, does the AI actually create greater value than the status quo? Because at the end of the day, all of the civilization around us is the result of surplus added value. And if we looked at the Industrial Revolution a couple of centuries ago, the world was very different then. It was dirtier, less populated. It had many of the fewer infrastructures than we have today. And it's thanks to the increased productivity of the Industrial Revolution that we live in the kind of world we live in today. So the same thing is going to happen in the future with AI, except instead of physical infrastructure, it'll be the mental infrastructure, the information infrastructure all around us. So that's one of the things that we have to look to. So does AI actually make our lives better? Is it allowing us to do things faster? Is it allowing us to do things to a greater degree of quality? Is it allowing us to do things with fewer mistakes? And we should always be able to compare the AI method with the previous method to see where the value creation takes place. And I think a couple of the rough measures are going to be product quality and defects, as I mentioned, but also the multiple of productivity. How much faster can things happen? In the Industrial Revolution, automation made textile manufacturing in the UK, as opposed to India, about 40 times more productive per unit of labor hour. And so that was where the value came from. Okay, well, where does AI help us? Like, for example, if you're reviewing documents and doing discovery for a case in the legal sense, how many more hours of time are being saved by AI rather than having your poor paralegals read document after document after document?
And who would have a responsibility of tracking these?
Well, I think the companies are going to track these things because they're going to be trying to figure out how we actually sell these to other folks. But I think that ultimately the responsibility is on the government side. This is one of the places where I do think the industry is actually doing the right thing for once, which is seeking regulation right up front. So the reason why we need governments is because no individual company captures the value of behaving responsibly. That ability to behave responsibly, those effects are felt externally. So they're a network externality, an economic externality, where the individual people who are doing it don't capture the value. But government ultimately captures the value, because if you think about it, government's ultimately just a proportion of GDP. That's what tax is. It's essentially taking a piece of everything that happens. So because government is inherently benefiting from all the growth, government should be the one that also provides some of this oversight and is able to say, hey, we're going to take care of these externalities. We're going to have these regulations, and we're going to use our ability to tax and redistribute as necessary to put the right incentives in place to get people to do the right things.
Chris, a few last questions. Who or what do you follow to keep up to date of these regulations, developments in AI and new companies? How do they fall on your radar?
Well, I'm very fortunate that I have a friend named Jeremiah Yang, who is really active in the AI community. So he is deeply embedded in the AI community here in Silicon Valley. And I basically follow his Twitter account. He is just bringing me a constant stream of new developments. Like, for example, I learned that Facebook released a healthcare specific large language model, and he had already played with it and had comments on it. And he's at an AI conference in Las Vegas talking about how I think it was Visa was describing how they were going to be responsible with their usage of AI. So all these dispatches from the cutting edge are available out there. There are influencers on Twitter. Again, Jeremiah is one of them. Sorry, I believe it's called X now, but I still call it Twitter. There are influencers out there on Twitter and Instagram and other things, Substacks of various kinds. I think that you should just go ahead and try to tap into as many of them as you can and figure out which ones resonate with you, and those will be the ones you stick with. But again, I recommend my friend Jeremiah Owyang, and that's Jeremiah, and Owyang, Owyang.
That's wonderful. I have to start following him. And Chris, any final thoughts about mindfulness in AI or anything about the person using the technology?
Absolutely. One of the things that I think is really missing from AI right now, which is why it's so good that you have this podcast, is the fact that we tend to forget that the interlocutor or collaborator with AI is human and has human emotions and is subject to all the positives and negatives of being human. And so human beings who are mindful and AI, which is mindful, will be able to more effectively work together. One of these examples is the company that my friend Reid Hoffman has started with Mustafa Suleyman. It's called Inflection AI. Did a big announcement recently. They raised, I think, $1.3 billion from folks like Microsoft and Bill Gates and NVIDIA and Eric Schmidt. And what they built with Inflection is an AI large language model that is emotionally aware. So when you converse with it, it remembers what it's saying, and it also really takes care to check on you and how you're doing. Because the thing about these AI things is people are starting to use these AIs, they're getting pretty emotional. Some pretty tough stuff comes up, and life is hard, and we all go through stuff. When somebody types into an AI, what's the prognosis for someone with this form of cancer? I mean, the answer they get back is going to have a huge impact on how they're feeling. And something like ChatGPT is just going to say the 5-year prognosis for this is 15% survival rate. Whereas something like Inflection's AI, which is called Pi for personal intelligence, would say, well, the average survival rate, 5-year survival rate is this, but I have to ask, why are you asking this question? Is there something going on in your life, and would you like to talk about it? And it's AI taking on the characteristics of a compassionate human, a mindful human, a balanced human. That's something we could all use. Lord knows we do not have enough mindful people in our lives yet already. If AI could be mindful, then that would be a tremendous benefit to humanity.
Yeah, such a good point. All right, Chris, that's all I had for today. Would you like to talk a bit about the book Impromptu that you wrote, or anything else that's
Absolutely. No, that's a perfect segue. And I can't believe I'm a semi-professional podcaster and I forgot to put in the plug. So yes, that is fantastic. So the book Impromptu is available for free to anyone who wants it. If you go to impromptubook.com, you can get it for free. It's a free PDF that you can download. We don't even ask for your email address or anything. It is just freely available. You can also get it on your Kindle or Kindle device. So you could have it on a Kindle Paperwhite. You could use it on your phone or your iPad. Now, it's going to cost you 99 cents when you go through Amazon, because Jeff Bezos doesn't like to give things away. But some people may find this just more convenient to have it. And the story behind Impromptu is a fascinating one. For some time, starting last year, Reid was saying, I want to write a book with AI. And we were trying to figure out how to do it. It's like, oh, yeah, it's a good topic, but how do you actually write a book with AI? And finally, at the end of January of 2023, which is this year, we ended up getting together a group of people. Reid sort of spearheaded this and brought together a whole team of folks to try to figure out, can we do a book? And Reid's goal was, I would like to launch this book with the launch of GPT-4, which at the time was scheduled for sometime in March. So here we are, it's the end of January. So we basically have to write a book in February and produce it. So write and produce a book in a single month so that physical copies are ready to go on launch date. And the question was, could it be done? And so we spent a bunch of time experimenting and playing with GPT-4, and we came back and said, yes, it can be. It will be hard work. It will be tight, but it can be done. And so the small team of people worked on this. And the only way it was possible is because we're using GPT-4, which was a great productivity amplifier. It's not normal to write and produce a book in a single month, and yet we did. And of course, the book reflects Reid's thinking and I think offers a lot of great wisdom on where AI is likely to go. Of course, like everything that is produced these days, developments can change so quickly that by the time that we get to the end of the year, there may be parts of the book that are obsolete. But nonetheless, this is closer to the future than just about any other book you could possibly find on AI right now. And you can get it for free at impromptubook.com.
Amazing. And such a great example of rapid scaling and development. All right, Chris, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks again for joining us.
My pleasure. And of course, I would be remiss if I did not, in addition to thanking you, also plug the fact that they can learn more about me and everything else I do at chrisyeh.com. And they've been hearing my name, but you spell it CHRISYEH.com.
Thank you for tuning into Mindful AI. I hope that our conversation has provided you with valuable insights and perspectives on the fascinating developments in AI. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite platform. Also, don't hesitate to reach out to us on social media or via our website at Center Meditation to share your thoughts and suggestions for future episodes. Thanks again for listening to Mindful AI, and we look forward to bringing you more insightful conversations in the future.